Hello. It's a season of love, and of course, we have different kinds of people today. We have those who say, God, when they see that guy and that lady, doing some romantic stuff. And then we see other witches that will say, men has come, he will still cheat. Now, if you belong to the category of those that has given up on love, for one reason or another, then the next couple of minutes is for you. My name is Victor Akan, and I would like to introduce you to my Breath of Hope podcast. Last week, we addressed, a common issue, and that issue stemmed from the fact that children who grew up in divorced homes or who experienced divorce while growing up were 50% to 200% more likely to get divorced than children who never experienced any form of divorce. And I spoke about, two, important effects. The first group of people don't believe in love anymore because if their parents failed, why should they succeed? The second group of people, grow up looking for that craving, for that validation, right? They grow up, but they eventually get insecure in their relationships, right? And they begin a whole cycle of toxicity in their relationships and things like that. And so this episode tries to address these issues so that if you come from a divorced home, the chances of you eventually getting divorced is drastically reduced, and you should be on the same level playing ground as someone who never experienced divorce. And these are some of the tips that I would recommend to ensure that these odds are greatly reduced. 1. See the pattern for what it is and why it is harmful. Now, a very quick illustration. A person who grows up not believing in love because he or she saw their parents have some sort of messy divorce, and they are like, if my parents could go through this, a love that was meant to be beautiful could turn this sour, why should mine be different? And so this person doesn't believe in love. But let's say this person eventually falls in love and gets married, still having that preconceived notion, right? That person would eventually repeat the same cycle of dysfunctionality that his parents, experienced. And so that person growing up in a broken home, feeling hurt, feeling the way he feels, would have passed down that hurt to his child, at least not on an intentional level, at least. But he would have still done it by virtue of consequence. So it's important to understand how these patterns can play out in your life. And first of all, understand how they have affected you. Understand that they are dangerous, and if you're not careful, you can repeat the same pattern in your life. So sit down, be reflective, ask yourself, how has the fact that my father, my mother had this issue, how they got divorced, how has it played out in my own life, right? In what ways have I been affected? What is my orientation about love now because of the fact that, my parents are no longer together? Now, sit down and ask yourself, what are the possible ways this can affect me and my children? What are the ways I can react? What are those insecurities that I will bring out subconsciously to my partner? This is a point of discovering yourself. This is a point of spending enough alone time, to reflect and understand yourself better. Secondly, understand this. Your parents' experiences are not supreme. And what that means is this. Now, if you're unmarried, picture yourself. Picture, if you're in this economy right now, picture how hard the economy is. Picture getting married to someone and having kids that you have to take care of. So first of all, you still have to work on yourself on a mental level, on a moral level, if you're religious, on a spiritual level, on a financial level, very importantly, right? You're trying to find your food, and I'm telling you to imagine getting married, settling down, having kids, and you're still trying to find your way. It seems scary, to be honest, right? If you're at that level of life, it seems scary. And you don't particularly see yourself as a god, that is, as a person who has everything figured out. But that does not change the fact that your children will see you in a godlike way. That is someone I should look up to, someone I should revere, someone I should learn from. So your children are living in a reality that isn't necessarily real. And that brings me back to you. When you saw your parents go through these things, you saw your parents as the first window of possibility of what should be. You saw them as mini gods. But in reality, they were really just people trying to figure things out. So what that means is that they were human beings like everyone else, imperfect. Beautiful parents, but yes, imperfect. So what that also means is that just because it didn't work out for them doesn't mean that it shouldn't work out for you. Because in a vast, space in the universe, you have different people it worked out for, right? And so understand this, your parents are not supreme. So you must have that self-awareness, that self-consciousness to understand that, if my parents, could even if my parents failed, there are some things that my father couldn't do well that I'm very good at. So I am not limited by the limitations of my own family, right? I'm more exposed, I have a deeper variety of knowledge, and so I can do better as a result. And for some people, it isn't even about the belief that whether their marriage will fail, whether their marriage will not fail, right? Some people just feel like shit because if my parents couldn't make it work for me, then maybe I'm worthless after all. Jeremiah 1, where God was talking to Jeremiah, and God said that, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, right? I destined you for a purpose, right? I called you to be a prophet of nations. And so God is essentially telling Jeremiah that before I created you, I had a plan for you, I had a purpose for you. Now, what do you call things that have a purpose? They are called useful things, not useless things. Especially things that, have a unique purpose that was given by a divine being, right? That means that they are divinely important, right? Because they were created for a purpose by a divine being. Now, what's my point? My point is that you were brought on earth for a purpose, right? For a unique purpose. And, essentially, regardless of, the nature of, your parents' divorce, or how your parents couldn't stay to make it work because of you, or this or that, regardless, you are important. You must understand that there is a supreme being. There's a place you draw your identity from. There's a place you draw your feeling of self-worth from. And the fact that you are alive today means that you have some sort of unique purpose, some sort of divine essence for being on earth, right? So whenever you feel like you don't matter, draw inspiration from there. Understand that you were brought on earth for a reason. Understand that the fact that you are still alive means that God has use for you. God has a plan for you, right? And that should make you feel better, right? And from there, always tell yourself, I count for something. I matter for something. Oh, when you're in that relationship and you feel like I don't have self-worth, tell yourself, I am here for a reason. I am here for a reason. That means I am worthy. I am worthy for being alive at least, right? I am worthy for being here. Like, I have worth. Why? Because there is something I'm supposed to do on earth before I die, right? And that will help you. Now, thirdly, don't marry a person who believes in divorce. Now, what do I mean? And now, of course, I'm not talking about extreme cases, right? There are extreme cases where, the person wants to kill you. You have to run, right? Now, I'm talking about a person who just says, I believe that, if you're not happy in your marriage, you can just take a walk. Or a person who believes that if things are not just working, there's no finger to point at something deadly. They just say, if things are not working, walk away, something like that. Because there'll always be a time in your marriage where things are not working, or where you're not happy, right? Or when you meet people that you think are better than your partner. You want to be with somebody who is able to dig in deep, so that in times where you feel like, taking a bow, that person is able to fight for you, right? Fight with you, right? And so marry someone who doesn't believe in divorce. Now, next, marry someone who is kind and intentional. It's a very simple saying, right? It's easier, right, to just live in the same house as someone who is not trying to cheat you, as someone who always looks for ways to cheat you, right? It's just easier to want to stay with a person who treats you with love, kindness and respect. And how do you know people who are kind? Well, to be honest, people who are kind, you don't judge kindness by how the person is treating you, to be honest. At least when the person, is trying to get your attention in the first few months. You judge kindness by how the person treats people he stands nothing to benefit anything from. So for instance, how does he treat the waitress, right? It doesn't even have to be, social hierarchy kind of thing. It could be people of his own peers. And people of his own peers, he doesn't necessarily need anything from them, but how does he treat them? Does he seek to cheat them? If you're just a Yahoo boy, of course, you understand that he's cheating or that he's going to find ways to cheat you. Now, my next point, consider premarital and marital counseling. Now, what does that mean? I mean, we like to make an assumption that because we're in love, we'll be able to walk through things. Our love would lead us there, but that's not necessarily true. And one proof of that is that your love for somebody has led you to breakfast before. The fact that you were not thinking has led you to chop heavy breakfast, right? Think about it, that you're on a plane and there's this pilot. You ask the pilot that, how good are you? The pilot says that I never really went to a school for flying plane, but I believe that my love will help me fly this plane. I mean, will you allow the guy to fly you? I don't think so. So this is the eventual point. Flying a plane is a skill, and engineering work is a skill, coding is a skill. Now you must understand that dealing with relationship is also a skill. It's actually a soft skill. Being emotionally intelligent is a soft skill, right? So you must work to build yourself, right? And this is one thing that counseling does, right? It exposes your mind to become more sensitive to your partner, to communicate more with your partner, to be intentional about being more patient, kinder. What are the things I'm not doing right? Self-reflect and things like that, right? And so you'd realize that by exposing yourself to these different soft skills, the chances of your marriage working increases tremendously. Now, next thing, be around people, friends now, who see the sanctity of marriage as divine, not some common thing that whenever you're tired you just walk away from. And this is where I say that your environment matters a lot, because you would only outperform as good as your environment. Last one, trust in God. Now, why am I saying trust in God? Because it is possible to to apply all of these rules and your marriage will still crash, to be honest. These are just odds and probabilities, right? Now, the reason why I say trust in God is because you can be driving a car at 40 kilometers per hour, you're driving safe, and something can just happen, and someone that is driving at 150 will just hit you and you're gone. You did everything you could, but situations came in that you could not avoid or you could not control, that causes you to go through a messy divorce. I mean, even top marriage counselors, professionals get divorced, right? Now, what's the point? The point is that after putting all these principles in place, have faith in God to perfect them. Understand that God values your marriage. In fact, God values your marriage so much that, the only comparison that, the Bible makes, between Jesus and the church is actually the relationship between the husband and the wife, where it says that the husband would love the wife so much that he's able to protect her and die if the case be, and the woman will submit to the husband, right? That's the only condition that the Bible, that's the only comparison that the Bible actually uses, right, to compare something so divine and perfect, such as the relationship between Christ and the church. And so understand that, God is interested about your marriage. In fact, God sees marriage so deeply that he says that, a man will leave his father and mother and the two will become one flesh. God sees marriage so deep that he says that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So understand that you're trusting God from a place of logic, from a place of understanding. And the understanding is this: God is heavily invested in your marriage. God cares about your marriage working, right? And so you're partnering with God to ensure that every principle that you're laying down is a principle that works, that would work. Why? Because you have faith that God is out there to back your marriage. God is out there to invest in your marriage because he wants the marriage to work, right? And so you have the backing of the Supreme One, right? So what do you do when you have the backing of someone who is very powerful? There's a confidence you go with. There's a boldness you go with. I mean, if Tinubu tells you, enter this place and get this done, by my authority, the way you work will even change, if you get what I mean. So these are the tips I have, right? I mean, if you have any other tips, you could add it in the comment section. Can't wait to see you on Saturday, where we'll be dropping a new episode. Thank you so much for staying with me this far. Have a lovely day. Bye.